Henderson. Senator Payman.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioner and team. Just a few follow-up questions on Senator Henderson's line of questioning. Has Google and YouTube confirmed whether they think they're in the ban?
We have, to date, they have sent us, I believe, one official letter, maybe a second letter.
I can answer that, Senator Payman. So at this stage, Google and YouTube have conveyed to us that they don't consider that they're covered by the ban. We have a different view. We've advised them of that.
Okay, because since you sent both Google and YouTube the self-assessment form, for whether they should be in the ban, have they responded since then?
They have.
That they don't believe they should be in the ban. Do you think this is probably based off the preliminary view that was expressed that YouTube will be an age-restricted social media company? Has the eSafety Office position changed at all and become certain that YouTube should still be in the ban?
We've performed our preliminary assessment based on information available to us from a range of sources, having regard obviously to the rules and legislation, to publicly available information on how YouTube is used, its features and functions, information that we have received from YouTube and Google, and we have used essentially the same process as the assessment tool that we've provided to industry, and at this stage our conclusion is that they fall within the scope of the SMMA obligations. We have indicated to all of those services that we consider fall within that they are open to provide us with further information for us to continue to assess.
And so if they have refused to be part of the ban or expressed that they shouldn't be, what's the process? And would you sort of characterise YouTube and Google reducing engagement with the eSafety's office because of the preliminary view you may have expressed?
They've met with us on several occasions since and continue to engage with us, so I wouldn't say that there has been reduced engagement. In terms of whether they comply or not, an industry participant can consider themselves to not be subject to obligations but may still nevertheless choose ultimately to effectively comply. We've not had indication from YouTube and Google either way on that. That's probably a matter to wait and see closer to the time. If they choose to not comply, then we will consider what next steps might be appropriate in terms of enforcing the legislation.
Okay. Just on a slightly different topic, in August the notorious website 4chan announced it would not be complying with requests from the UK government under the Online Safety Act 2023. Would 4chan be considered an age-restricted social media platform under Part 4A of the Australian Online Safety Act?
No, it is really an image board, and we have had dealings with 4chan. I'm not sure if you want to share anything further.
We did investigate a recent complaint of material that turned to be Class 1 material that we believe was hosted by 4chan. The investigation has been finalised and that material is no longer available. So we weren't required to issue any removal notices for that. So 4chan had complied prior to us needing to get involved.
Okay.
I should just note, Senator Payman, that we haven't formally assessed 4chan as to whether they're required to comply with the SMMA obligations. We've taken initially a risk-based approach to our assessment, so focusing on those services that have significant presence in Australia with significant young users and obvious key features that are likely to make them fall within the obligation at this stage. We know that it will be ongoing assessments of different services, particularly as services evolve, user migration happens and the way that users engage with services. So whilst we haven't considered them at the moment, it's possible in the future that we may need to assess them.
Because, yes, it is an anonymous image board, as the Commissioner said, but it has no account system, so you can't really trace back to users' posts, which essentially
would
could
mean at the
merely be
moment-
a hash string rather than serving as any kind of connected record of a user's engagement on that platform. Would you? So, the fact that you guys haven't had that sort of conversation around engaging with them to see whether they fit within the Act, it's just that I'd be curious to know whether 4chan would be effectively exempt from the ban if, given that, trying to protect Australian children under the age of 16 should prevent them from obviously seeing ultra-violent extremist and, violent content that's quite objectionable. If we were to ban them off that, whereas innocuous services like Facebook or Snapchat, which cannot be accessed without an account being created. So it would be...
So what I was going to mention is of course, the social media minimum age was really designed to provide a delay for under 16s to access or have or hold an account. The online safety codes that we've just registered are designed to prevent under 18s from accessing any violent content, pornographic content, self-harm, suicidal ideation, disordered eating, the kind of content that you would typically see on a 4chan, and they would be considered as part of our designated internet services. So they will have obligations under those codes, and those would be the powers that we would use if it were necessary, and they carry the same ultimate fine of $48.5 million.
Minister, did the government or the department consider anonymous accountless sites like 4chan when developing the social media ban policy?
Not to my knowledge, but of course that's a policy question for the department. I think the focus was on mainstream social media that a lot of children were using and spending a lot of time and being exposed to addictive design features like opaque algorithms and endless scroll. I would consider 4chan one of the darker sites on the web. These are things that we do deal with through both our Phase 1 and soon our Phase 2 codes, but also through our illegal and restricted content scheme, because that's where a lot of terrible content sits.
Thank you, Commissioner. Minister? Sorry, the question was to the Minister.
Sorry. Yeah, and I think the Commissioner's gone to some of the policy area. Senator, what our government considered was how important it was for us to take world-leading action to reduce the online harms experienced by young Australians, and that's why we're delaying access for social media until the age of 16. That's because we're on the side of parents and not platforms. When it comes to the regulation of the laws, we'll work with the Commissioner on that. And of course, as the Commissioner has outlined to you, there is separate work around harmful content, dangerous content that is separate again to social media in and of itself. But social media in and of itself, we know, parents know the harm that it causes, and that's why we're delaying access to children.
Okay, okay. So the answer to the question is essentially no, but that's
I
okay.
answered your question about what we considered, and
if 4chan wasn't considered as an accountless,
the Commissioner has taken you through where 4chan.
But this was a question to the government because
I
it's the
answered
government
your question.
policy.
What I'm saying to you is it's very important that we take this action, and there are other multiple ways that we are dealing with dangerous content online, not just for children, but for everyone.
But the fact
every
that
Australian
4chan
user.
wasn't even considered.
No. I told you what we
When the
considered.
Minister is
Considered
speaking, if you
protecting
allow her to
children.
answer.
Yep, no, that's fine. Commissioner, is eSafety aware of any recent any other piece of legislation within the communications portfolio of similar significance to the Online Safety Amendment, like the Social Media Minimum Age Act 2024, being passed through both Houses of Parliament 8 days after it was introduced? Any other examples of legislation you might know? Or?
Not that I'm aware of, but that's probably one for the Minister.
I'll come to the Minister. It's okay. Is eSafety aware of a recent example of a piece of legislation from any portfolio being referred to a Senate committee for a 5-day inquiry with a 24-hour opening for submissions?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Thank you. In her second reading speech to the SMMA bill, then Minister Rowland referred to the change as a world-leading reform that Senator Green just quoted. In preparing the policy, did the government identify why no other country on earth had yet implemented this reform?
I think they were trying to take a bold leadership role, and I think if you watch, well, I'm talking to other regulators all the time and other countries all the time. New Zealand's passed a similar law. Papua New Guinea's passed a similar law. There are 15 countries in Europe that are looking to us. So I do think it's bold and it's novel, and there is no playbook to write it. We're figuring out how to implement this the best way that we can. And I'd also note that we've put out a statement on children's digital rights because we want to make sure that this is done in a way that respects all of those rights so that we're not cutting off their digital lifelines, particularly those who may come from disadvantaged communities or may feel more themselves online than they do in the real world.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, no, I appreciate the intention. Minister, is the primary purpose of the social media ban to restrict access to harmful content or to restrict access to harmful design features?
It's to protect children against social media and the persuasive and pervasive pool of social media.
So harmful content, access to harmful content, or access to harmful design features?
I've answered your question.
Not really, but okay.
No, I have. You just didn't like the answer.
I mean, I literally had a very simple question.
Because you don't support the policy, and
that's
what
okay,
that means
Minister.
is you don't support,
Senator
the
Payman,
platforms over
come to order.
I'm going to my next question.
Well,
I know
Senator Payman,
time is against me.
Well,
that's okay. Look,
it is, but Senator Payman, when you make a proposition to the Minister is entitled to answer that proposition without interruption, as you are entitled to ask your questions. So we'll come back to you.
Why in the embargoed media release regarding the social media ban's announcement and the release of the Age Assurance Technology Trial Report was third-party comment prohibited, Minister?
I don't know what you're referring to.
Sorry?
I don't know what you're referring to about the embargoed.
There was Media Watch released information on how the press gallery was prohibited of including third-party commentary when there were embargoed media releases around the social media ban's announcements from the government.
The legislation or the...
It was both the social media ban's announcement and the release.
Media Watch in a while. I'm usually putting...
Well, it was about, I mean, I'm surprised that, the Minister hasn't briefed you on this or the government hasn't provided you, because it was the Age Assurance Technology Trial Report that was also being released, and not having a third-party comment, because what's interesting
why
is
don't I take
it
it
was...
on notice, Senator Payman, because
Sure.
then we can get you the answer that you're after.
Yeah, you can probably take this on notice as well, because if there was a concern that third-party comment from experts would undermine the confidence in the policy, then being able to publicly, rebut these concerns would probably be the easiest way of reassuring the public, right? So, yeah, please take that on notice. Do you know if whether these media releases prohibit third-party comments? They were put in place because the government was afraid that they would bring up questions in public arena that the government did not have answers to. Minister?
No, look, we'll take on notice the question about a media release. I'm not sure about the details of that, but I can take it on notice. Of course, when governments announce policies, particularly policies that we're very proud of, we're prepared to answer any questions about them.
I'll just give you the date so to help you and the Minister. It was Monday, September 9th, 2024 at 4:32 p.m. Would you like to share the call, or can I keep going?
Senator Payman, may I ask you now how much longer you are likely to be at this stage?
Probably another 10, 15.
Well, Senator Payman, given the stage of the evening, I would ask you to consider whether some, if not all, of those questions can be put on notice, but in which case I will share the call with Senator Roberts.